Welcome to the Rest Round with Butch Hiles and Gary Hashman.
All right, guys. Hey, we're started back with the restaurant with Gary Hashman, Butch House, and Zack Humbertson. After I messed up my son's name, Jack, and I guess that's why I'm all screwed up. But anyway, so we'll talk about a bunch of things today. But I did want to put this together because we got the WVGO coming, and I probably do a bad job about this. I think I do because I like every time I'm supposed to do something, meaning like post on social media about something, I'm a little bit late. But I think it's good because I want people to know too, that anybody that listens, is that Zack helps a lot, especially with these super fights and this quintet and reffing and all this other stuff too. So to kind of put a face with a name and do all that stuff and then talk about like kind of what we're doing. Because and I purposely didn't ask when we were offline too, because I do not know what's happening with, who's in, who's out, what we got going on. So let me preface this by on March 25th. Am I right? Or is it 26th? I think it's 25th.
25th.
Yeah, March 25th, which is Saturday in Charleston, we'll have our next tournament. And what we've been doing is having a quintet tournament, which the goal is I would like to award somebody, I think I picked $750 at the end, right? So that would be the thing. So we have an entry fee too, but we already had one. And can you guys remind me of the team? I know we had like kind of like
Sure.
they're kind of put together, but it was kind of like a true jiu-jitsu team, right? From Kentucky. And then
Correct.
kind of like a put together team, I guess, right? I'm not being
Derby with 6 blades. No. It's Derby with 6 blades. I believe they're affiliated somehow. It was, I can't remember everyone on the team. Is Evan DeWitt, one of their female training partners, Wes Thompson, and then I can't remember everybody else's name because I never met these people before. So I don't know everybody's name, but that was generally the gist of the team. They won the first semifinal-ish kind of to go to the finals, and then we kind of decided to make a semifinal on the other team. 2 teams, could be a super fight, 1,000-pound limit, but then it kind of blew up. So like I got like 7 people messaging me asking for details. So I guess I can kind of clarify it on here. I have one for sure team in Meta Jiu-Jitsu, which consists of Justin Turner, Josh Hill, Tyler May, Nathan Heslip, and Dylan Leper now. Other than that, I've had other teams reach out, mostly from West Virginia, 2 from Pittsburgh, and one from Maryland. So we have pretty good, so pretty much what it comes down to. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, depending on what happened, like I don't want to spend like I'm trying to think, I don't want to sound weird. I was gonna say I don't want to spend a lot of time doing those, but that's not what I mean. Meaning that I wanted to do 2, and then like you said, then we'd have the finals. But I almost think it's kind of smart if we had like an alternate team, like I had another 2 go off, because we know it happens, right? Like if we get to the finals and somebody's like, well, I can't make it, which is highly possible, right? Like
Sure.
It's probably not a bad idea to have some others in there. So I don't know. I guess that's what I was going to say, is I don't know if we want to do it this time or wait till like June or something like that. Or
in my opinion, I thought about this today a lot. I think the best route would be have 2 teams, the first 2 teams to register, because everyone's always up in the air. They want to do it and then it falls apart at the end. First 2 teams to register via paying the money will be in. So, and then the backup team will be if the winning team doesn't make it. You get what I mean? So it's pretty much just a race to who pulls it. And this is going to be on the podcast. I'll make sure it gets out there that it's first come, first serve. And if you don't make it, it's very well met that the money is not won that day. It's in the August tournament. So if you can't make it, it goes to the ultimate team. No refunds.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important. I mean, maybe Gary, you can do this, or Zack, you want to, but who wants to describe what a quintet tournament is?
I can go ahead and take that for a second. So the quintet tournament is 5 versus 5, right? And it's not like all people hear that and they think 5, like 10 people on the mat at the same time. That's not what it is. Essentially what you have is you have 2 teams of 5, and each team can weigh up to 1,000 pounds, I believe it is, right? So you have 1,000-pound weight limit on your team. And you get to pick the order of your team. So team A and team B send out their number one guys, right? And so the number one guys go against each other. And if team A's number one guy beats team B's number one guy, now it is 5-4, the number one guy still stays out there, right? And essentially we're just whittling it down. If it goes, if it goes to the time limit, then it's both guys basically. It's a draw and they're both out.
Correct.
So essentially you could have one badass guy go out in the number one spot and wipe out the entire team, right? Or you can have your badass be your tail leg, and he may never end up competing because your number three guy cleaned out the last people on the other team. It's an interesting way of doing team jujitsu. You know, normally we think of jujitsu as being an individual sport, not unlike wrestling or MMA or anything else. And really in combat athletics, we don't, you know, a little bit in wrestling, we have like team points. So if your high school team or your college team is going up against another team, you know, you can win the team points, but really it's kind of concentrated around the individual effort. And it's the one nice thing about this is that it gives you a little more team mentality, a little more team unity, and also team strategy, because you can send out, let's say your number one person to send out is, you know, somebody who weighs 145 pounds, and they send out somebody who weighs 215. That can happen, right? And so now you got somebody who weighs 215 going up against a 145. The 145 might not get into a position where he can submit the 215. However, he may be able to nullify him. And if that 215 guy is one of the big bangers on that other team and it goes to a draw, you've essentially eliminated that one of their power players. And so you can, you know, a little bit of the strategy that goes into this team wise is not necessarily get the submission. You do want to get the submission, but if you are the lesser competitor, and I'm saying that kind of tongue in cheek, but you know, you might have, maybe you have a purple belt on your team going up who happens to draw a black belt on the other team, right? Or somebody who's got a ton of experience. If that purple belt can hang and nullify them to a draw, that's kind of like a win for your team. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into it that wouldn't necessarily go into an individual match. And I really like that.
Yeah, and I would argue the first time people probably didn't have their strategy together. And again, I'm not trying to talk trash about the two teams are in there, but we also found out like we probably had an error on our side that we're going to correct this time, meaning
For sure.
they've got to write the teams down ahead of time, because you know, nobody was trying to cheat, but it was like they saw who came out and they like switched around, and then there's a little controversy there. But again, that all should lay on us, because if
it was my fault because they asked me ahead of time, and I never told anyone that because no one's asked me directly, but I'll take full. They asked me that on the whim. I said, yeah, not realizing what could happen. But now for sure, I need that before any matches start. I'll need the list.
Yeah, and say again, not blaming anybody. I just normally if something goes wrong, I take responsibility. That's all I'm saying. Like, which is a good idea. I wouldn't have thought of that either. I mean, I'm sure it's in the rules, but it's like now we have to say, make sure you do it right, because it's too late. Like, and that's how you learn, right? Like, it was just a little thing and it wasn't a big deal. Like, it wasn't like it was life or death. You know, just somebody's like, hey man, you got to make sure you do this next time. So we are, and I think it's important too, because sometimes like you're somewhat in a way sometimes going in blind, right? Which is part of the strategy too. And hey, listen, like that's the other thing. They don't need to make this list now. They can get there that day and see who's up. They're not going to know who's going first and not, but at least they can kind of look and say, all right, well, that guy, I know that guy's this or this girl's that. Here's what I think we should do. And to Gary's point, you know, some of it could go off weight. I mean, that's part of your strategy. I don't know what you think, but like wearing people out with a big guy is a good thing. I've seen this before. They, you know, different teams have set out females, you know, because we do allow it to be co-ed or whatever. And the females were used to either a placeholder, not saying they didn't think they're going to win, but it's like, I know what their strategy was, is they're putting somebody out in some cases, maybe to make somebody tired. and having certain people come out, because there's a good mix of a couple of the terms we did of black belts and even white belts, right? Like I think the last quintet, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there a white belt in the finals just because of how they did their stuff, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it ended up being a tie in the semi, so both guys got out, and it was a purple belt versus white belt. White belt heavyweight, purple belt won like 60-pounder.
Yeah.
It's a good match.
Yeah, it was good, and it was a lot of because of what you said. Like I know one match, you know, I think somebody got their foot popped, right, but didn't tap, kind of. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that the strategy? Because I think did that end up in a draw or no? That match there that I'm talking about with.
That was there's a few. Oh no. Yeah, I know there's a few foot pops, but I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, that ended up in a draw, which swung it to the finals. It was a very back and forth quintet. It was Hunter Jones versus Evan, and foot popped. I won't say who because I don't want to make it whatever. I don't want anyone to take offense. And I think the person, both guys would know I would not mean to slight it anyway. But it went to a foot pop. They just couldn't get the submission. If they don't tap, they don't tap, you know. And trust me, I hate looking at mangled limbs and watching it mangled in the process. But, you know, it went to the finals. They didn't tap, you know, and sometimes you have to just make that decision to break it or not. And so one guy didn't want to break it because he's just a super nice guy. And it went to, and the other guy had great defense, not taken away from anybody. You always got to be careful how you say something because it can come off that way. And but yeah, it went to the final. That's how it got to the finals. So you nailed it.
Yeah, and that if I would argue, I mean, regardless if that was strategy or not, I mean, essentially you're taking a black belt out of the mix, right? Like
exactly. It was a selfless act almost.
Yeah. So I think, and quite frankly, I mean, huge success for what we're planning to do. That first one, again, there's little kinks that we needed to work out, but I don't think it hurt anybody. Huge success. Again, it's not the first one we ran, but it's the first one in this series of stuff. And I think it's good because I get a lot of like, I think, and that was the other thing. The first time, think of how hard it was hard to get people to sign up, right? It was very hard, right? Like
back in, back out. People will say they're ready, then the day of, they're not. So I have to constantly check on guys. That's why I'm putting the money in there. First people to actually pay me are going in. Because people back out, things happen. Sometimes messages aren't clear. But yeah, it is very, very hard to set up. That was the first successful one, and people were excited after. Like they were like, that's even me. I was like, damn, I hope Ground Zero puts together a team because that would be some really good matches.
Yeah. Well, and to everybody's credit too, I think that now that everybody see it, maybe, you know, people didn't understand what was going on before, but now I think people like kind of understand what the process is, what the teams look like. And then what I was going to mention too is, like you said, like, I think making sure somebody registers ASAP is important too, because what people forget is like, if we think we're waiting for you and everybody's waiting for you, and then we're like 2 weeks out and you decide not to do it, you don't understand what the bind is it puts everybody else in, because like, just like you said, you had teams from Pittsburgh and Maryland, right? Like there's travel involved with that, and getting all, like, now we're not just talking about a couple people, we're talking about 5 people, like 5 separate people that got their own issues, their own travel things. Are they getting hotels or doing this or doing that? Like, so we just really need more time to get everybody involved. So that way, hopefully everybody understands that kind of process, right, of why we're doing that. But dude, I think it's going to be huge, man. Like the last one was huge. Now we're making the culmination of getting this one done and hopefully getting to the finals and stuff. And like you said, man, I think, and I think everybody was there, but I think it was after people saw it, everybody's excited now, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's like a big deal. Yeah. And we'll do more. I mean, it's just like, you know, sometimes we've done super fights forever and that's very successful, right? But this is something different that I want to showcase, you know, just like I said, teams like that's my thought process too, is that just like everything you guys said is perfect. But I think the other thing is like showcase your gym, right? Like that's cool. Like whatever, that could be another thing, like Team Ground Zero, team whatever. Like I think last time people kind of, like you said, there are hodgepodges of teams a little bit because we had to. But now I think that would be awesome. Like if you could really just showcase the talent that you have. Man, I think to me that's exciting, right? Because then people are talking, instead of just individual stuff, they're saying, man, Ground Zero, Huntington or Ground Zero more, they were amazing. Do you see those guys? Like, see the stuff they were doing, like blah, 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 like that I think would be huge for jiu-jitsu in this area, which is the point of the tournament, right? Is just to grow jiu-jitsu.
For sure.
So anyway, I don't know. Do you guys have anything to add to that? What's your thoughts on everything?
I have nothing else to add. Just if you're watching this and you're looking for that kind of information, get with me quick. You have my contact info, and first come, first serve. So I'm not looking for the best. I'm looking for the committed. That's pretty much going to be the best team, I think, anyway. So,
and it usually does work that way, right? Whoever commits, those are the ones. I've talked about it with people in my academies that I've been at, that when you go to competitions, if you lose at a competition, you didn't lose to a bad guy, right? You can go to a competition and have a bad day, but you lost to the best guys at another academy. Like the worst people at your academy don't go to compete. The best guys at your academy go to compete. So when you're losing at a competition, you're getting beat by the best guys around, because the guys who are lesser than are not ready for, or if they're not ready for competition, they don't show up at competition. And so that's, kind of goes back to that whole Teddy Roosevelt, it's not the critic, it matters. Like showing up at a competition means that you are probably one of your team's prime guys. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there in the first place. It's very rare that somebody who doesn't belong in competition shows up to a competition. It happens, but it's rare.
So here, speaking of this
Sure.
too, Zach, have you been in a quintet or anything close to that before?
No, I've tried to get on teams. They had one up in Pittsburgh at Armazeni's. He runs a lot of super fights, and like when COVID started, a lot of like kind of like indoor closed off shows before we were really allowed to do it. And he had one recently, and I wanted in on it, but I have a hard time finding people that, it must mean I suck, because like people will be like, you know what I mean? People are like, yeah, I want to do it, but I gotta, I can't do it this day, or maybe I don't know, but I just have a hard time finding a team. I want to do it one day. I think I'd be a great add-in, just because I'm notoriously able to tire people out. So even if I don't win, I can at least, if it's a really good guy, I could probably, unless they just submit me right off the bat, which happens sometimes too. I think it'd just be a great strategy for the endurance game.
Yeah, which is good. What I was going to mention too is I remember, Gary, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but like the first one we did, Gary was in, and I feel like that was his strat. Didn't you start off and then try to go as long as you could? And then didn't you have all white belts on your team except for you?
So I was actually I was the anchor leg.
Okay.
And but yeah, I was in that one. And Justin actually was in that one as well, from Meta. But so I did. I think I had one blue belt on my team, and the rest were white belts. And my guys did great. They did everything they needed to do to kind of set me up. There were a couple matches that went to a draw. So we had white belt against, I want to say that there was a couple times where white belts were going against purple belts, and the white belt, maybe they didn't win, but they were able to hang on long enough to get the draw and eliminated some of their tougher guys. Now I think they did eliminate my four guys with 3 of their people. So I was like me against 3. And I think I got 2 wins. And then I can't remember how it happened now. Man, it was a while ago. But anyway, I know that it ended. Oh, it must have been a draw, and they had 1 person left. So I beat one, and then I drawed with the second guy. And because of that, they still had 1 person left. We had nobody else on our team.
So what do you guys think, like, from that experience and everything else? Because again, it's going to be person specific or team specific, or dependent rather. But what do you think the best strategy is? I mean, to do it the way you did it, or do you think you should have started first and let the other guys at the end? Because I think the downside is if you start first and you didn't win, and you have not as strong competitors after, like you're in some trouble, I would think, right? Like I would say you need at least 2 really good people, and then you could have a good starter and a good finisher, right? And like it's just tough, because I can also see as a bad endurance guy, which Zach is not, like I could see like thinking everybody was lazy like me and starting like just try wear people out. And then somebody like Zach would be like, your strategy failed. Did you work it all? Like, I'm not even tired, but a lot of stress. I mean, I'm just trying to give people tips. I don't, like, what do you think you guys think? What's your opinions on that? Or
Well, my particular strategy wouldn't work well for like what I was saying about me, because if it goes to a draw and it takes me 6 minutes isn't a long time for me, and it goes to a draw, then I'm out too. So I didn't tire anybody out. So my strategy is pretty much pointless. It should be to go for the win. If it were me putting a team, I'd probably mix it in between strong guy, weaker guy, strong guy. Ideally, your whole team's strong, but strong guy, weaker guy. Really just to have like an even balance. And if you start to lose, to build momentum back up pretty easily. I think morale would be key in this kind of format, because like in the last quintet, the two heavyweights, Wes and Josh, went to a draw. And in my mind, as a ref, looking at the rest of the teams, I was kind of like, damn, those are their heavyweights gone. Like all the heavyweights are out now. So, I was curious to see how morale would be built back up, and it would pretty much switch between each match. So that from that experience, I felt like that was a really big factor.
I think. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that is. I mean, I think it's interesting hearing everybody's viewpoint, right? Because everybody's gonna be different. It just is what it is, right? But I think all this kind of would help people. It's a little fodder for the cannon. Like, okay, I've heard what Gary has to say, I've heard what Zach has to say, I've heard, now we got to come up with our own thing. Like, how are we going to do this, right? So yeah, what do you think? Again, I know what you did last time, Gary. I don't know if it's the winning strategy per se.
Sorry about that. My phone went off, and
No, it's okay.
It's also tied to these headphones. So as far as like my strategy and setting a team up, and this is just strictly looking at it as a coach, how I'd want it to go out there. I kind of echo what you're saying, Zach, as far as I would probably want if we think of the 5 guys on my team as, 1 being the best and 5 being the worst, I would probably want my best guy being my anchor, right? He's kind of the fail-safe. If everything else goes to shit, I've got my best guy last. Right? I want him to be the anchor. I probably would want my second best guy to go first. And he's going to be kind of a tone setter, hopefully, right? If my second best guy can get through a couple people before he gets eliminated, and the hope is that he takes out the first person they put up, maybe the second person they put up. And with the third person, if he can tire them out, now the weaker portion of my team can hopefully do enough to make it easy for the last person to go. And so that would be my strategy. Is I want my second best guy to go out and essentially do as much damage, run ram shot through as much as he can. And then hopefully my middle guys can tire out what's left. That way, if I've got my anchor there, he's my best guy in my stable, I'm sending him out last to kind of, if there's anything for him to clean up, he can clean that up.
Makes sense, right? What do you think, Zach? There's so many different ways to go, right?
For sure. Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, man, that's a well thought out strategy. And then I thought about the time, one of my friends, Lee Keaton, who you had, is a great strategist, made fun of my strategy because he said, he was like asking me, and I was like, I'm going to leg lock the wrestlers and wrestle the leg lockers. And that was like all my strategy was. And he was like, dude, I like have like a well thought out strategy for competition. I just go out there. So yeah, I think there's just ways to go about it. There's so many ways. You can't really, and you don't know the team beforehand. So you really can't formulate one. So I think Gary's is good on the turn, and at least broadly speaking, that if you don't know who you're going against, you can at least not lose morale by losing your best guy early.
Yeah. Yeah, it's complicated. Yeah, there was somewhere else too I don't remember what I was watching, but I remember in something, I'm going to do a bad job of this, but anyway, these people decided not to put one of their better guys out first, right? Guys or girls. And the problem was they never got to go, right? And so everybody questioned that strategy. And I don't remember where that was, but but again, like it made me think too, because they're like, oh, because there was multiple teams going. And I remember after that, they're like, oh, this will be interesting. I wonder if the other teams will do what that team did, because clearly their best guy never even got on the mat. And that was a risky strategy, right? Like, and had that not happened, like everybody would have thought about it, right? So I mean, it's crazy how many different ways you can go, which is the cool part of the whole thing, right? Is that you get to display, multiple people's talent. Everybody gets to watch. You get to display a team, but then the strategy is, which is what we don't have a lot in jiu-jitsu, or at least, if you guys are going against each other, Gary and Zach, like we don't know what your strategy is, right? Like one of you could have a strategy and Zach could just be like, I just go out there and just fuck people up. That's what I do, right? Like nobody knows, but at least we have a thing, which is cool. So I'm excited. I mean, that's the thing. And that's what I wanted to get this on there, is that I wanted like a little background, hopefully we did a good job, but also just to say like, look, we've still got over a month, it's getting pretty darn close to get things together. And if you want to be in it, especially for the quintet, get that stuff going. And again, then you can still compete just like we always do. We're going to be in downtown Charleston, do some stuff, but all these tournaments are going to set some stuff up. So obviously that is on the WVGO website. But one other thing that's not related to me, but I did want to mention on here, just because, and Zach, you might know of this, you might not, but I got an email while we're sitting here from Keith No, and I guess they're doing a New Line cage fighting event there, right? And as it says, May 13th in Bridgeport.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
So he is looking for a 190-pound female 3-stripe white belt. Is these people are, again, Zach, I'm pretty sure they're from your gym, am I right? Or from Morgantown? Or
I don't know anyone from my gym. I run all the competition. I don't know anyone, but I got one already that I can probably find.
Okay, so yeah, both of these girls are, I'm reading the rest of the email now live, but both of these girls are from Ground Zero Morgantown. So they've got a 190-pound female who's a 3-stripe white belt, and a 180-pound female that's a 4-stripe blue belt. So he's looking to match these up. He's doing super fights. He's having a couple grappling fights in between the MMA fights, or whatever else he's got going on. I don't know a whole bunch about the event. But if we can find some people for them, I think that would be helpful. Obviously that's still part of your team.
Yeah, I'll be messaging him. I'll look out for him. I mean, if they're from Morgantown, well, I guess, maybe I got some people, you know what I mean? And I don't mind inner gym, training, because we don't always completely inner gym. So
yeah, no, and that's the thing. I agree with that 100%. It'd be nice if you find some other people, but like the other thing, it's not like you're giving a couple people an opportunity to go against each other, especially females, right? There's not a lot of females. So if you're like, well, I don't want to go with my own team, then you're kind of robbing those females of having a match that's going to be in front of people, right? In a cage or whatever they're doing in the boxing ring. And I had actually just wrote him an email too. And I hate to say this on here, but hopefully we can do it there. But my thought process was, besides those fights, like maybe, because typically when you do an MMA event or whatever, it's in the evening. So I was like, man, what if we do a jiu-jitsu tournament before your event in the evening? And that would make a lot of sense. So I say that live on this podcast, which is probably a dumb thing to do, but because this is real-time thought process. But but that all being said, Keith and I, and that's why he messaged me. We've been talking about a couple of things anyway. And I'll mention those on here too. It's like all these are in the process of doing it. But just like everybody, there's a long time ago that in jiu-jitsu, I wanted to have like a ranking system like you see everybody else have now. And admittedly, Naga was first, Grappler's Quest, they did it first. But I was like, why don't we all do that? Truthfully, half the time when you do that, all it does, let's just be honest, is it encourages people to compete more in your tournament, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So let's just be honest. There is an upside to that. But how many times now that Fuji's doing the same thing and everybody else, like I see all these posts on social media, like, hey, I'm ranked 3rd in the world, and they make it bigger than what they are. Yeah. So I mean, I get it. So it does mean something to people, right? And again, I'm saying the other part, to be honest, like you do know that those people are doing that. So you go to their tournament more because you're only getting ranked in their tournament. You're not getting ranked if you go to Naga and you're competing at Fuji, right? Like,
for sure.
Which is fine. That's okay. I'm just, I want to be honest on my side. But anyway, Keith wants to do that for our stuff, which I think is cool. And I never did it. One is because, what I just said, which I'm not against either, because obviously I'd like more people come. tournament. But the other thing was, I was like, man, I do most of this stuff like on my own, right? Like I don't have like a giant team, and obviously you guys are helping on the team. But I was like, man, it's just too much for me to do. But now that Keith was like, man, I would like to do that, and I think at these super fights that he's going to have on May 13th, that's what he wants to start doing there. It might not necessarily always be our tournament, but we're going to come up with a system, I think, and try to make jiu-jitsu, just keep trying to make it grow in the state. And I think it's cool that, you know, I've known Keith since probably early 2000s. So it's cool to see him do the stuff that he wanted. Cause quite like, honestly too, he's doing more MMA and boxing, kickboxing, but like that stuff died, don't you think, in West Virginia? Like there was a time, like it's funny because I had got a message from Leon Ramsey, like the current West Virginia athletic commissioner, and a couple other people, and just we're just talking. But it was like, don't you think it's funny how hard we fought to make MMA legal, and now there's no MMA? Like it never happens.
Yeah,
No.
it's crazy because you said that in another podcast, and it got me started training for MMA because I was like, man, I could really like, you know, I was like, I really kind of owe it to, it's weird. It's like, it's almost selfish, but I was like, I really owe it to kind of really like try MMA for real. Cause I had fought in MMA before and I was god awful at it because I only trained jiu-jitsu. But now, you know, I've been working on striking a little bit, super inconsistent the last 2 weeks. I had ringworm. And then this week I'll be back in Thursday, but I had this, and, you know, I don't mind skipping for that, but I just didn't want to get punched. Let's be real. But yeah, I thought it was crazy. Cause like, I remember when it first got legal, because I fought a couple times. I remember everybody wanted to fight. It was just like these cards were stacked all the time. And I kind of just fell out of it because I can train and do jiu-jitsu a lot more. And I didn't take MMA serious at all. But then like I kind of was like, you mentioned that, and I was like, man, I really kind of like, I kind of just like owe it to our state almost, because I just want it to be big. Like I don't want to be some big time MMA anything. I just want it to be exciting again. And, you know, I feel like it would just be a good thing almost. So.
Dude, it's kind of a bummer, right? Because it's like, I remember when I did MMA shows, and I probably mentioned a little bit down there, it's like the point wasn't like I wasn't out trying to be a promoter. Like I made that clear. And it wasn't because I was trying to have like an out if I failed or anything. I was like, and like, again, I don't mean this disparaging. Everything I say half the time sounds disparaging, but it was like, I used to make the comment, like most promoters are crooks, and I don't know if they started out as crooks or they became crooks, but either way, I don't want to find out. So that's what I would say. I was like, I don't want to be a promoter because I don't want to be that guy. And I do get the point, like, you know, meaning I'm not like, there's been some bad ones, right? And that's also why I did MMA shows, because the guys that were bad were trying to do MMA shows, the same guys that were like making MMA illegal so they could continue with their events, were the same guys trying to jump in an MMA. And it's like, fuck no, man, that's not going to happen. Like we're not going to let that happen. So, and you know, for that matter, most of those people disappeared. And that was my point. Like, I was like, no, I want those people gone. So that way we've got it. But the ultimate thing was there's just not a lot of gyms in West Virginia. And then the other thing, like, it's weird because like we kind of almost have to fight each other because there's not a lot of gyms. But I was like, oddly enough, against that, not because I was afraid to lose to you guys or Morgantown. I just like MMA to me is different than jiu-jitsu. Like I take it a little bit more personal maybe than you should, because it's still a fight. Like, for example, we had Wes Hansen fought Thomas Eulenbrook from Ground Zero Huntington, right? And Gary and I did a podcast with him a long time ago. He lives in Colorado now, but I just remember, like, I couldn't believe that fight I had nothing to do with that fight. I think Leon might have helped set it up. And then I just couldn't believe that Thomas took the fight, not against him, but I was just upset because I was like, man, I thought we were all together. Like we made this legal together. Like we shouldn't do it. And of course they weren't thinking like I was thinking, but it just kind of hurt my feelings. And then of course, then during the fight, I want my guy to win. So I was really cheering for Wes. And I remember, like, you know, Wes ended up winning, but he was hitting Thomas pretty hard a few times. And I was cheering, get him. And then after it was over, I felt like shit. Like it was the opposite, right? Like I was really happy for a second because our guy won, and, you know, I was one of his coaches. But then literally as soon as I seen Thomas, like I felt like dog shit. Like it really hurt me. And I never talked to him, and we didn't mention it in the last podcast. So it's probably good that I mentioned now. I just want to, like, I didn't like it. I just didn't like it at all. Like that to me is different than jujitsu when you just get submitted and you move on. Like this dude was getting punched in the face until he quit. And it could have been the other way. It's not, again, like I'm saying that and we won and it hurt my feelings. I was like, man, this is not what I wanted. It's okay eventually if that happened. But I was like, right now, I would rather, like in the first MMA event that I was a part of and that we helped through I called it West Virginia versus the world. Which was really West Virginia versus like Ohio and Kentucky or something like that. But
Yeah.
but that was the point. I was like, this is our time to showcase the talent that we've got and the gyms that we got. And this is what I want. That was my vision. But realistically, it's not what you can do. And the reason is you got to sell tickets, right? And the only way to sell tickets is to get a ton of local people on. So that means like I need Huntington, I need Ground Zero, I need Morgantown, I need Charleston, I need, blah, 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 because all those can come. Now, if I put Gary on and any of his people from North Carolina, how many are going to travel? Probably not very many, right? So it's not the best recipe for success. So it's not exactly what hurt us, but what hurt us is there isn't a lot of gyms that do MMA. And then on top of that, it's like, it is what it is, right? And it's a bummer. But yeah, so you're right. Like, go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was and that's, we've talked about it on here before too, but that's, you said West Virginia versus the world, but that's a big part of it too, is getting some sort of home field advantage. It all the time in all sports, everybody wants to fight at home, right? If you're a football team, you want to play your playoff games at home. If you're a boxer, you want to fight in your hometown. So it having that home court advantage is nice. And being in West Virginia, there's not too many opportunities for an MMA fighter, somebody who's taking it serious, to get a real hometown feel, to be fighting in his backyard. It just doesn't happen. He's going to have to travel, and that's a lot, I know just in jiu-jitsu, right? Just doing jiu-jitsu. And I thankfully, and Zach came up to Nelsonville, Ohio when I was living in Ohio, and we had the competition there. And it was nice to have something close by, right? It was nice to have something there where people in our area didn't have to travel so far to compete. Because when I was competing, I competed in Virginia, I competed in Indiana, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and even when I was competing inside the state of Ohio, it was still a 3-hour drive. I was driving to Cleveland, I was driving to Cincinnati. None of my friends, none of my family, nobody I knew was there. Maybe my wife or my kids, or a couple people who were competing with me from my academy would come. And so a lot of times there were a lot of days where, even coming down to Charleston from Athens, Ohio, I might have went down there to WVGO by myself, and I was alone. I didn't have a corner man. I didn't have anybody behind me. And I went and did it myself. And that sucks. It's a shitty feeling to be by yourself,
Yeah.
I will say that I think I had a lot of growth, right? Because it wasn't about getting everybody behind me. I think I got over the idea of the of having people there to motivate me. And so I became a real good self-motivator when it came to competition. But it would have been nice. It would have been nice to have, rather than be there by myself, it would have been nice to have 5 or 6 of my teammates, a couple people from my family, to be there and cheer me on and not have to travel 7 hours to be there.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this before too, is that I think when I look at our tournaments, right, which is fun. And the reason, and I'll preface this because I know Gary and I've talked about this before, but like sometimes people wonder, like, because I'm throwing the tournament, and obviously I have some guys from our gym compete, right? So they'll think, and I've heard some gyms say like, well, they're just out to make me lose, right? Which obviously is dumb because I want people to come back, right? So I'm not going to screw you. And we don't have that many people that compete on top of that, right? As adults go, but the problem is I always felt like our guys get screwed because I run the tournament, which means I'm preoccupied, period. I mean, and I'm typically their coach, right? Me and some other guys, I don't coach at all, right? Nor do most of my other coaches, because they're, Now they do with the kids, like they do then, but most of the time after they're done, like I let most of our instructors that are the kids instructors, they get to coach the kids. Like that's what they ask. They'll say, I'll ref, but I do not want to ref when the kids are up, obviously, because I want to coach them. And I'm like, that's cool. So then as soon as that's over, then they'd usually jump out and ref as well, right? So the point is, like, our guys never have anything. It's kind of sad. It's just like Gary said. And then it may be worse because we're actually there. Right? Like, so, and we don't talk to anybody. It's kind of sad, you know. And I do my best to say, like, because I watched some, you know, and I will admit too, like there's been like a couple of times my kids competed and I did cheer for them. It was like I had tried not to, and then I was like, fuck, everybody's gonna understand. That's my son. Like I have to cheer for him.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna get over it, you know, man. And it's cool, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and I did, but that's the other thing. And we don't have to do that. I think everybody would be okay, like if I was helping, but like that's also like, I think it kind of looks stupid, like if I were to do that, right? But I only bring that up because like that's the thing. Like I think we're all in that to some degree because I take a hit because I just like I love these tournaments. You know, I want to see jiu-jitsu grow. Like if we didn't have these tournaments, like for example, you know, Fuji's not coming back. Like we've talked forever, right? It was hard for them to run tournaments because they get bigger numbers, and they came here and the numbers like were never that good. They were good. Like for me, those are good numbers. Like I'm happy, right?
Yeah.
But like for Fuji, they're like, man, like 100 people showed up. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good, man. They're like, that's terrible. It's like a waste of my time, you know? And I'm like, well, I know, but you have to understand there's like only so many gyms and then only so many people that compete. And West Virginia is not convenient for it. You're right. Like if, you know, everything's like if you're coming from Columbus, that's 3.5 hours or whatever. So nonetheless, this is what we got. And I think it's competitor focused, right? Which is why, you know, we've got Gary from North Carolina, and obviously we're affiliated together and friends, but we got Zack from Morgantown, or really Bridgeport, right? But from that big gym. And that's the point. Like I want to have every gym ref, right? If they can. I want every gym to be involved so that and I think people are finally getting this. I think early on, people are a little confused because they're like, well, you have a gym and you're running this tournament. How can I trust that you're going to like treat us right? And then, you know, some people made a big deal out of whatever, you know, it's just like, I was just at a basketball game. So people argue about every call. And I'm like, man, these, you know, tonight was high school kids, but for example, yesterday I was at some 12-year-old kids, 12-year-olds, right? The entire time, everybody argued about every ref call, like it was life or death. And here's what I'm thinking. They don't care who wins, or like these guys they're not even from here. They're not from my little Elkview town. And nonetheless, like a lady who's trying to fight with my wife, and it's like, blah, blah, blah. It's like people amp stuff up. The reason I bring this up is because like, I get why why people get amplified, especially when it's their kid, because that's what happened at the basketball. When it's your kid, everything's amplified, right? But it's the opposite, man. If anything, my friends get screwed, because if I know you two, which I do know you two, and you guys are both competing, I promise you, I'm going to give you the worst fucking matches you can have. Not because you're not my friend, because I know that you can handle it, right? So if Zach's out there and he weighs 160 pounds and Gary comes out there and he's 100 pounds heavier, I don't give a shit. Like, because I know Gary's okay and Zach's okay. But like, I don't do that with people I don't know. Like, you know, I'm overly, it's sad because sometimes I bend over backwards. People like, they'll complain about the match or something, you know, the ref missed this. They're human. They mess. Let's do it again. Right. We'll do the match again. No other tournament would do that. Right. Never, ever. Right. Like, and nor would they listen. Half the time, the guy that's running the tournament, like if you're Kip Collar or, you know, any of these other guys, Tim Morthland, or most of the time they don't even talk to you. Like they're like, don't, you know, like I'm over here, you know, don't talk to me. Like, which is a valid thing, because that's the other, like sometimes when people get left off brackets, you know why it is because I'm over there doing brackets, and then somebody comes and talks to me for 10 minutes while I'm in the middle of it, and I forgot what I was doing. And then they walked away, and then I start writing again, and then somebody else comes up, right? And it is annoying. It sucks, but I love you guys. Right? Like, I also love the fact that you can come over there and talk, but it's like, that sometimes I have to say, hey, look, I got to get this done. And the more you talk to me, the more I'm going to forget. Like and I'm, whether it's from getting punched in the head or if it's just I'm old, as soon as you talk to me, I forgot what I was doing. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and like, so to, you know, and this is not to kiss ass or anything, but like, you know, I wasn't originally a Butch Hiles affiliate, right? Like I wasn't under Butch Hiles. I was competing at WVGO since I started jiu-jitsu, and I kept competing there. And a big part of me competing at WVGO was the fact that it did seem competitor friendly, right? If I came and if I had a division of 3, you know, and it's tournament style, and I've got a first round bye, and you know the other guys go, and now I'm in the gold medal match, or you know, however it happened, like Butch, you knew that I wasn't there for one match.
Yeah.
And so you would ask me, hey, I see that you're in this one division. It only looks like you're going to get 1 or 2 matches here. Are you interested in other matches? Is there anywhere else you want to be? Do you want me to put you in another division? I see you're in the Masters. I can put you in the adult, whatever it was. And actually, the one that the kind of stood out to me and made me appreciate Butch a little more than I'd already had, and maybe kind of pushed me in his direction as far as like wanting to be under him as an affiliate, was that you had it was the $350 for it was 170 and up, and then 170 below, and I ended up winning that, but I wasn't even gonna enter into it. I didn't have any. I was like, that's a professional thing, and I was a blue belt at the time. I was like, I don't have any business being in there, and you were like, there's no reason for you not to do it.
Yeah. And you're like, shit, I just want some money.
Yeah. And so, but it was one of those things where it's like, your whole thing was like, I know you want to get extra matches, so just get it here. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, that's right. I do want extra matches. And so it was nice to be like, there's, you know, to get the extra matches, the fact that it was so competitor based, like I realized that you were trying to make it good for competitors. And that made it easy for me to start coming to all the WVGOs that I could, because that's all I wanted. I just wanted a place where I could do jujitsu and really test myself, right? And people would want to think that the talent level is lacking, considering there's so few gyms in West Virginia, and that you know, it's easy to try and say that maybe the talent pool's not so well. Just because the talent pool's not so big doesn't mean it's not quality. And that was the other shocking thing too, is like I would come down there and get just as tough a match as I would in Cleveland or in Cincinnati or in Columbus. And I competed all over the place, and I got just as much competition in West Virginia as I did anywhere else, you know? And so being competitor friendly and not lacking in the quality of competition was why I kept coming back.
Which is awesome. Yeah. And I remember those days too. And it's the thing, because I learned some stuff too, meaning that I think both of you guys are probably, you won as many matches as you won it. Is that same for Zach? Like I know Zach, because I feel like you have a lot of stamina. Actually, both of you guys do. Like, you know,
Me and Gary got against each other 3 times. I'm 0-3 against them, but I'm not counting. But I'll get that one back.
Yeah,
No, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the same wavelength. I compete all over. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a hiatus just because I'm burnt out from traveling, because I don't have a coach. I have a coach, but you get what I mean? Like everyone has families and stuff like that. I'm a single guy that can just pick up and go on the weekend. I don't have kids or anything like that. So like I go, Pittsburgh is my #1 spot. Cleveland, I'll go up there sometimes, and then Southern West Virginia is generally my hot spot. And like I said, I started at WVGO. Well, I didn't start jiu-jitsu here in West Virginia, but when I moved to West Virginia after the Army, I started at West Virginia Grappling Open. And then I really kind of took off. I started doing loose Armazeni's fights, stout fights, bigger tournaments. But yeah, the reason I like these tournaments the most, I encourage my guys to go all the time. And they do. We have a board with the name signed up, who's going to your tournament in March. It's just, I tell them, it's like, it's very relaxed environment. So like if I coach, like if they make a mistake, I don't throw a fit. I never do throw a fit anyway. We can get a little closer. We can talk to you. Refs are very forgiving if you break a rule, because they know it's not on purpose. So it's a very good environment for competition. And it's, again, I get any match I want. You put me in every bracket from 170, 180 and up. So 4 different divisions, gi, no gi. And that was not a very smart choice on my part, but it was, I got the matches. I got 15 before I had to tap out. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm getting mauled.
Well, that's another good point too, because I had to learn that too. As like, so I would run into two guys like you that I knew liked to compete, right? And then I started thinking, well, like everybody's like that because they paid their $65 or $85. They're here, they want as many matches as you can. And then I had people get super mad at me for putting them in stuff, and like I was like, "What's that? Not what you want?" Like I had a guy one time show up. He was a brown belt, and he was like maybe a heavyweight or close to it. And there's no other brown belts there, right? As we know, like the higher you get, it's like tough, right? And then I was like, man, there's no matches for you. Like I knew that from the get go. I was like, there's probably not going to be any. So if there's none, just let me know. I was like, I know we say no refunds, but man, like I know you drove a long way. Just like I'll get your money and you can go. And he was the opposite. He said, nah, I'll just take the medal. That's what, like, you mean like you just like want to pay and you'll take the, he's like, yeah, I just want to take the medal. And I was like, so at first, and I'm not talking shit. It sounds kind of funny, but I was like, well, that's odd. Like, and then like another brown belt came that was like 140 pounds, and so I was like, oh man, I was really excited. Like I told the guys, hey man, like another guy's here. I know there's a weight difference, but you probably should win. You're like bigger, and he's like, well, I just want the medal. Just kept saying it over and over. I just want the medal. Like, so like he didn't care, which is okay. Like there's other people, like everybody's not the same. And then I feel guilty to this day because I feel like I talked him into it because I was like, are you sure? Because he doesn't have anybody to go to with either. And like, if you guys win, it'd be cool. And like, it doesn't matter, and it ended up being like the lighter guy beat the heavier guy pretty easy. Right. And then he was not happy. It was like pissed that like I talked him into it. And I was like, so I had to take a step back because I was like, okay, like not everybody's here like Gary and Zach. Some people, that's different. Like how many people do you know, for example, and unfortunately I know a few because I do this, like that sign up for super fights. They have no ambition of competing whatsoever. They just want me to make the poster and make the post so that they're on it and they pull out. Because I'd say what, and I'm not gonna mention his name, but there's a guy in Phil Davis from Ground Zero Morgantown wrote me and he said, hey man, I saw you have this guy on here, just so you know he doesn't show up to any tournament. I said, well, hey man, he told me he would. He swore, and he's like, I'm just telling you. And he kind of alerted me to that early on. He's like, I think the guy just likes to have the poster. And I was like, well, no, because he's the one who requested this. He's gonna be there. And then sure enough, like 2 days out, it's like, I got the flu, I'm not gonna be there. I was like, God damn it, like Phil was right. Like, what I'm saying? And I only mention that again, I'm not like trashing people because we're all different. Is also, then I've got to be careful because there's some people that love the million matches, but they're all, and I'll put myself in that group too. Like I never have had good cardio ever. Like even when I was in the best shape ever, I don't know if it's because I have such a big adrenaline dump or something. It's just like my cardio is just awful in jiu-jitsu. But I probably would have been that guy. Like if somebody came and was like, man, I've got an opportunity for 10 matches. I would have been like, I'll take 2 of those matches like, or 3 of those. Like, let's cut that down a little bit, and which is good method, because I think to be competitor friendly, I shouldn't assume you want to do certain things. And that goes for everything. So that's just part of learning too, is like, going to the person or the coach and say, hey man, like, do you want this? And then also say like, just because I'm asking you doesn't mean that that's what I want you to do. It's like, I'm not peer pressuring you at all. I'm asking because you're paying your hard-earned money and I want to make sure you're happy. So if you're happy doing 1 match, or if you're happy doing 0 and taking a medal, that's okay. Like that's fine. Like that's your prerogative. Like, right. Like I can't say nothing bad. Like, I just want to make sure you're happy. That's literally the only thing.
Well, I know as a competitor, when I looked at it, I mean, it's no different than in my regular life. I'm a bargain shopper too, right?
Yeah.
Like I've always been like, I'm going to get the most out of this. You take me to an all-you-can-eat buffet, and I'm going to do my best to put that buffet out of business, right? Yeah. And it's no different when I go to a jiu-jitsu competition. It's like, hey, a lot of it'll be like $85 to compete, an extra 20, and you can be in as many divisions. Okay, well, I'm going to give you the extra 20, and I want every single division that I could possibly be in. And as long as I don't get injured, I'm going to try and make all of those. Not everybody wants that. you know, and that was the big thing for me. It was like, some people are just coming to test this out. It could be their first competition and they're just getting their foot in the water and they don't know if they want to be a competitor yet or not. And they're trying it out to see if the shoe fits. And for me, like, that's kind of like renting a sports car instead of buying it. Like, I don't want to put all this money into it and not own this thing. And that was just my way of looking at it. Like, if I'm going to invest in this, I'm going to milk it for everything I got. And I like, that is just me in my everyday life, right? Like, if I've got a car, I could probably use a newer car, but I'm going to run this car until the wheels fall off and the engine explodes. And I'm not going to go out and get a new car until it's absolutely necessary. It's just who I am, and that's my personality. And so if you know, if I look at it from a competitor standpoint, like, you know, if I'm up in the purple belt division and there's no other purple belts show up and they say, hey, I've got this blue belt competitor who's really good, do you want to go against him? I can see why people would be like, no, I don't want to go against the blue belt competitor. I came here for purple belt competition, right? And there's nothing to gain for me in this beating a blue belt. That being said, I was the guy who drove to Cincinnati and Naga didn't have the purple belt for me and they offered me a blue belt. And so I took that match because I wasn't going to waste that trip. Now, I understand why people wouldn't do it, and it's nothing against those people. And you know, I completely understand that's not what you're there for. But for me, it was always about, like, I just want to, I'm probably never going to be ADCC champion. I'm probably never going to fight in the UFC. There's a lot of probablys here as far as like IBJJF black belt world champion is a nice thought, was most likely not going to happen. I would have to change a lot of things in my life to be that guy. Right. So if I'm not going to be those things already, what am I losing in taking this match with somebody who is supposed to be lesser than me because he's a belt level below or two? Right? I'm not losing anything. This is an experience, and I was just trying to cash in on that experience. That's the way I always looked at competition.
Yeah, and it's tough because not everybody does. I would just say that on the other side, and this is why for that example too, like I get people and I let them do. I don't know what. Maybe you guys can tell me too. I don't know how other tournaments treat this. Meaning, if somebody's a blue belt, for example, I think Lee Keaton was one. Like, he asked me if he can go in a purple belt division when he was a blue belt, and I was like, yeah, but like, here's what I need you to do, and I'll just. So for people that don't know, this is what I do. I'll just be honest with you guys, and I've had more than just Lee. I said, you can, but I don't want you to wear your belt. Right. And here's why. I'm going to let you do this, and I'm going to kind of let you do it on the down low, is because the purple belt doesn't want to lose to a blue belt. He has nothing to win. Right. And it's an awkward spot for him. You have everything to gain. They do not. Right. It's an awkward spot to be in. So other than to avoid all the drama, just don't wear your belt. Just go in there and we'll see what happens. Now, if you do well, you cannot compete in the blue belt, right? You're a blue belt, you're going to the purple belt. Luckily, we run the highest belts down. So typically after that happens, they're not in it, right? And I had one of our guys do it one time. Actually, he was from Apex. He was an affiliate of ours, but Apex from Virginia. Guy was a killer, blue belt, but he won the purple belt, was like murdering people. But some of the other teams are pissed he didn't have his belt on. Like, pissed because I guess they thought they could grab it or do whatever. And that was what they're complaining about. And I was thinking in my head, because I was also reffing those matches, like, you don't want this guy to put his belt on, because you're going to be even more pissed that he's wrecking you guys and he's just a blue belt, right? And so, and it happened anyway, because I think I let him compete in a blue belt absolute, because there wasn't a bunch of people, and the guy won all this stuff. But in the same with like Lee and this stuff. But the point is, like, that's another thing I'll let people do, because sometimes you want to know, like, I as a blue belt, you want to know how you stack up as purples, right? Or as a purple, you want to know if I stack up against browns. Like, you're getting close, and a lot of people aren't going to give you the opportunity. That's another thing I do. And like, I get it. Some people are going to bitch about it too. And the reason I bring this up too, I'll just be honest. Like, I remember, I competed it was like the last one was like 2007. Steel City had a big jiu-jitsu tournament in Pittsburgh. But anyway, same thing happened to me. At the time, I was a brown belt. I showed up. Nobody was in the brown belt division, heavyweight. So I was done. I remember changing clothes, and then they came to me and they're like, "Hey man, this guy, like, would you please do this? He's a blue belt, whatever." And I was like, I'm changing clothes. I don't want to do it. They're like, "Can you just please, like, because you don't have nobody, Okay. I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. I didn't give a shit about that match. I went out, but I got my ass kicked. I'll just be honest, right? Doesn't matter if whatever my excuse was, like, it doesn't matter. The guy beat me up. Turned out he was like a Michigan, like literally the Michigan wrestler. So like I remember had just learned a lateral drop from Dan Severin. He was at the gym showing us lateral drops. I was like, I'm gonna do a lateral drop against this guy. It's like the only takedown I knew. That guy just fucking, like, before I knew it, I was like suplexed on the ground. I didn't even know where I was at. And I remember Don Cunanan was like yelling at me, do shit. And I was like thinking, like, I don't even know where I'm at right now. This guy just fucking slammed me on my head and then just get murdered. The guy was a big dude. Doesn't matter. Whatever the excuse, I just got destroyed. But I remember from that day, I was like, regardless of what the thing, I'm not making excuses, but I just know that match meant a lot to that guy. It meant zero to me. I did not care. And even after it was over, like, he was so happy. And I felt happy for him in a weird way. He was just so happy. He was talking to me. He's like, I was trying to avoid your guard because I knew you could, like, kick my ass and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all I'm thinking is I just got murdered by a blue belt while all my friends were trying to, like, Don Cunet and other gyms were like trying to, coach me, and it went terribly. But the point was, again, another learning experience. We're meaning that anytime that happens at our tournaments, when people ask, like, I'm just honest with people. I'll just say, hey, like, look, I don't mind if you do it. If I can, I'll talk to other people and say, like, because they have nothing to gain from this, right? Like, they don't. Like, they might take it, but I'm not going to go around and let you do this or that. It's like, yeah, I got to pick and choose. Like, so I think the point was, I like to do it because I know what it means to other people. Like, so for that blue belt to go with me and beat me because of belt, not because I am, but on the belt, on paper, fucking big to him, right?
Mhm.
And it's big to everybody else. So I like to give you the opportunity, but I also, as the guy that got my ass kicked, I also know what it means on the other side. Is like, this isn't always the best thing to be in. So you need to talk to both of those people ahead of time. If, again, that's kind of why I do the don't wear your belt thing. That way nobody's getting embarrassed. Like, if we look at that match and just on video and stuff, and nobody's going to be like, look, that blue belt just whooped that brown belt's ass, right? Like, with no context or nothing. Because I get it, right? It's
the Nicky Rod problem, right?
Exactly.
It's the Nicky Rod problem. He's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, or is he?
Yes. Yeah.
He's not a blue belt in grappling. And that's it's easy for outsiders. Here's the funny thing about stuff like that is you were worried about what people who are coworkers who know nothing about jiu-jitsu are going to think about that. Because everybody in the jiu-jitsu community knows, like, okay, that guy was wearing a blue belt, but that wasn't blue belt technique. Yeah. Right? Like, everybody, you can watch it and you can see it happen. You can be like, that guy, okay, yeah, he was wearing a blue belt out there, but everybody in that room probably knew that he was a little bit better than blue. Right? And it's the same thing when we watch Nicky Rodriguez or any of those guys that are competing that seems above their level. And really the worry is that you have to go home and tell your wife, oh man, I went to the competition. They didn't have anybody for me. Here I am, a brown belt and this blue belt. I got beat by a blue belt. That sucks. And it sounds bad when you say it that way, but if you would have watched the match, I guarantee you would have watched it and said, damn, that is the greatest blue belt of all time.
Well,
I was okay.
I was gonna say it's 16 years ago and it still hurts my heart.
It happens to me every once in a while. Sometimes I'll get that kind of problem and I'll never say no to a match. I got it can be heavyweight, lightweight. It doesn't matter to me. If you want a match, it's and I'll never make the excuse when I lose either. I think that's kind of where the disconnect is. I think I have a match in a couple of weeks against a 260-pound guy. Jeez. And yeah, I got Chihuahua energy. I'll go against anybody. And but like if I lose, I go in there, like, I could probably lose. I hear he's pretty strong, pretty solid opponent. And if I lose, I'm not gonna say it's because of weight. It's just because it just didn't work out that way. And I think he's a white belt too, but like a really good wrestler. the belts don't really matter in terms of skill, in my opinion. Like, I don't think they make a huge difference. I think the best way to look at a belt is just a level of commitment to jiu-jitsu itself in the gi. Other than that, like I said, you can get someone like Nicky Rodriguez who's wrestled at D3 level and then, trained at a great gym like Danaher's, or, someone like Hunter, who's blue belt now, but he was a white belt that was a D1 wrestler, or someone like Lee and one of my training partners, Alex, who study religiously, you know what I mean? They're students, so they have all that time, So, anytime I take a match, I just treat it indiscriminately. I treat it like you have that confidence to beat me and I have the confidence to beat you. So that's why I signed up, you know what I mean? And if I lose, I'm like the chillest person in the world. So if I lose, I'm not going to throw a fit. I'll probably just try and get a rematch, except against Gary or Lee. Or Colin. I've never gone against Colin, but those guys I know for sure are just they have my number. So I'm good. We know how that's gonna end.
I'm way older and way slower and way fatter and full of way more alcohol now. So I don't know how long I would be able to hang with you right now. I'm kind of out of the competition mode. So
Yeah.
Gary hasn't found his keys since the last time he and I partied together, just so you know.
They're still missing. I kind of echo what you said about the belt level too, right? Like I've always said that the belt, and it's not that it's meaningless, because it does have meaning, but the belt is an acknowledgement of your instructor, of your ability. That's all it is. It doesn't mean anything as far as like, it's funny because I hear a lot of people be like, oh, he's a Hickson black belt, or he's a Hoist, whatever it is. Even those guys have levels, right? Mm-hmm. The best black belts at a Hickson gym are the best black belts everywhere, mm-hmm. right? And it's the same. The best Helson Gracie black belts, the best Marcelo black belts, the best Danaher black belts. Those are all the best of the best. That's not the regular guy. It's not the average guy. The belt is an acknowledgement of the knowledge and skill that you've obtained, and usually also your ability to give that information to other people. That's what that belt level is. And don't treat it lesser than what it is, because it is an important achievement, but don't make it more than what it is either, because that's when things like getting beat by a blue belt, there are still times where I get tapped by by guys who are blue and purple and brown belts that I train with regularly. And it doesn't mean that blue belt's ready for his black belt yet, right? Yeah. What it means is I've made mistakes today. And those are mistakes that I need to nullify and not let happen anymore. Now, the mistake that I probably made is that I don't get enough sleep, I drink too much, and I don't exercise enough. Those are the big mistakes that I'm making right now, right? So those are things that I have to reconcile with myself, but it's not the belt level. It's different. Competition is different. If black belt was this magical thing, we would have 90-year-old black belts being able to beat 20-year-old white belts. And that's just not going to happen, right? There are other factors involved in competition. So, especially now where you have so many, like you said, collegiate wrestlers entering into mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu, because it's an easy transition from wrestling to those two. It's easy to find somebody who, on paper, if you looked at it, he's been training jiu-jitsu for 6 months, but they're like, why is he smashing purple belts? Right? Yeah. And I know a ton of those guys. Butch, you've had them at your gym, and I know a ton of those guys that it's like, this doesn't seem right. Why is this white belt smashing everybody?
Yeah, we've been running into those more and more, all of us, right? Because I remember going to I think somebody's tournament, but maybe Ground Zero Morgantown, but I knew they're WV wrestlers because they had the same kind of little tight spandex things on that said WVU, and I was like, damn, saying, and just like you mentioned, we have some WV wrestlers. Like it's like people, you might not have been doing jiu-jitsu, but you're, as Gary said, you're grappling since you're 3 years old, right? Like you've got a pretty strong understanding of what's going on. But let me kind of switch gears for a second, because I was looking at my time thing, and we are in a time crunch. But I wanted to obviously listen, man. We talked a bunch about WVGO. That's great. That's good for me. It's good for us. But I want to talk about Zach. This is big on my thing, because you're, as I talked about before we got in here, you're our David Goggins. I'm sorry. For real. Only because, and this is why I say that, not be, it's a joke, right? Because we know David Goggins is crazy and he does different stuff. But you are my David Goggins, because like when I look at your Instagram primarily, because that's what I see on, and, and I see that you ran a bunch of miles today, and you post pictures of the sunset or the morning sunrise.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, that's awesome. And then you go do jujitsu. How does this happen as a fat person that hates running? And let me just tell you this, because you don't know, but like, I've tried to like running for 15, 20 years. So I had a thing where probably 2009 was my first 5K. Somebody talked me into a 5K in 2009. I did it. I think I kind of ran. I finished in probably 37 minutes. A terrible time, right? But again, I never ran in my whole life. And then after that point, I was like, I need to get better. That's embarrassing. I need to get better. And I did. And then later, somewhere past that time, I was like, I'm going to do a 5K every year. And it didn't quite happen. I haven't done one in a couple of years. One was because of COVID. And then after COVID, I have no excuse. I was just lazy. It's hard for somebody that doesn't like. Every time I run, I'm like, why do people like this? Why I've never got to the state of mind that it seems that you've gotten to. And I don't know how hard that is to answer. So one thing you mentioned before we got on here, and I agree, is a hard workout makes you such a nicer person and a good person, right? So that's your meditation time, I assume.
For sure.
But what do you get? Like, what do you love so much about running? Like okay, that's one thing. I guess one thing would be, what do you love so much about running? And then number two, the most important question to me, how do you make somebody like me that fucking hates it and that's been trying since 2009 to like it? Like, and I've done a 10K, and the other day I entered just so you know, like a 25K, but I walked it because I didn't get ready. Somebody just convinced me to do it, and then I walked 15 miles. But what do you think? Or maybe I'm a guy that never like it. I don't know, but I just want to do it. I do. It's good for you.
I think everybody can like it. I think so. When I started, I didn't like it. I was overweight on the wrestling team, and my team was number 4 in the nation in high school. And when we started getting really, is when I entered high school. I've been wrestling since I was 10. And I remember our biggest guy, he was like a 215 pounder. He was always like the first guy when we did our like 3-mile runs. And he said one time, I didn't ask him about it. I didn't care. I wanted to be done with the workout. But they were like, he's like, tired is just a made up thing, which isn't really true. But as a kid, I thought that was like just the most hardcore thing, as a 15-year-old. I got into running about 2009 in high school. The day of my high school graduation, my girlfriend at the time broke up with me. And I know it sounds kind of cliche. Everyone's always like, oh, he's running away from his problems. But it was like the only time I really felt good. I was like really upset. I didn't know. I was a loser in high school. I was a loser in the military. So I just did not know how to like really, I thought it was the end of the world. I was never going to date a girl again. And so I got started then. 3 miles was about my max. Did that in the Army. I ran a marathon in the Army just randomly in Dubai. And that was just a random thing. I never even heard of a marathon before, but I just wondered how far I could run. Did it. That was the fastest one I've done yet, which is crazy to me. But
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? So you think you're more mentally in it then, or?
At the time then, I think I was just, it's not because I was younger, because I know I could do it now. It's my goal right now for this one coming in May. I think a lot of it was just, I don't know. Honestly, if I'm going to be completely honest, all the hot girls were kind of running at that speed. And so just something to look at. If I'm being like completely honest, I didn't want to say it, but I was like, man, I don't have a good lie lined up. I did not prepare for that question. But yeah, in that middle, there's a lot of like Emirati European woman and Australian woman. And I was like, this is the view I want to stay at, is at a 9-minute mile. So yeah, I kept it at that. Didn't run that long again for 10 years. So what really switched was I ran in college about 3 miles every day. When I graduated college, me and my then girlfriend moved to Martinsburg. and I didn't train at all, no jujitsu or anything. And I was so depressed. Like I was toxic. I mean, she wasn't good for me either, but like she didn't really want me training, not to speak bad on her. It's not anything about her. I didn't really have a place to train at. And then I remembered, honestly, you speak about David Goggins. I heard his podcast. That was the second time I ever heard of David Goggins. And he just like changed my mind. And so I broke up with her. Nice house, dog, everything, owned a house, nice job. She made a lot of money. And I moved into my old fraternities, who were then now members, into their basement. And then I slept there for like a couple months, got back to running immediately and training. And I lost 40 pounds in like 3 months, like just super quick. I was super overweight. So the turning point where I started getting back into marathons was, I'm trying to just make this really quick, was Halloween of 2020. I was running and I had two friends. I didn't know them at the time. Two females that were like, you're kind of racing. If you ever done like you're passing and you're going, you pick a person you're not going to miss. And there's these two females so we were racing. I didn't know them at all. And they ended up beating me really bad. Bad. It was like 5 minutes. Not that I looked up the times after, but I was like, how fast are these? And so I talked to them after just randomly, and they were so nice. Their names are Jackie and Kristen. I still keep up with them every once in a while. They were like, yeah, we run marathons, and they would teach. One was a teacher, the other was a counselor. And not to like sound insulting, but I was like, how are these average looking people running that consistently 26 miles, right? So then that's when they started kind of they were talking to them about it. So then I just started getting into marathon training. I started looking into how to do it. And then ever since, I've kind of just been super running into it. How to enjoy it. I always tell people that are beginning is always just run 30 minutes at your own pace, a comfortable pace. And that's the only time of the day I listen to music at the time. Now I still listen to music kind of whenever. But yeah, that was the only time I really listened to music. And so I like listening to music. And that's just kind of and then like I kind of really got into it. And it was kind of like a reward. It was running, I get to listen to music, and then once it was done, I turned it off. So I picked certain songs I wanted to listen to. And yeah, that's kind of like my advice, is just do it to the point you enjoy. Don't try and do it to lose weight, that's obviously a benefit, but just do it just to get outside, get some fresh air, and listen to music or a podcast if that's your thing.
So what do you think about that? And I got this advice one time, and and it was probably a couple of years ago, and I haven't followed it, but I remember it. So maybe you can help me with this. But what do you think? So my problem is if I went to run for 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
I expect to run for 30 minutes. And if I don't, like, I feel like a complete failure. And then I consider that time lost, because I'm like, I didn't run for 30 minutes. It's a failure. And that's how I treat it. And this lady was like, no, like walk and run and do it at your own pace and then get better. And it kind of helped. Like at first I was like, yeah, you're full of shit. But like the more she talked about it, she was like, no, like it should be fun. Like you're making it too hard. Right. Like, and I get it. Like I do, like I could make an argument up for what I said, but like, what do you think about that? I get, like, as somebody, I'm not even joking. Like it's, when I'm in shape, like I've won a couple 5Ks, but they're in my division, like my age group, right? So I'm not trying to pretend it was anything good, but like, man, it was never fun. Like literally what? Like even the ones I won, it was fun that I won. Like it was like the novelty of it. And I also was real about it. Like there's like nobody in my weight, my age division or whatever. But
you just showed up for the medal.
It's kinda, yeah, it was kinda. It's yeah, it's sad because I just did one not long, like within the last 5 years or so, with my middle son. I made him run. He was probably 10 or so at the time, or 9, and he still beat me. And that motherfucker, like he like walked, ran. He would just make sure, like he'd walk the whole time, and then when I'd catch up to him, he'd take off in a full out sprint.
Yeah.
Way ahead of me. And then when I catch up, I was like, man, I'm gonna, I thought I could beat him, but I couldn't. But anyway, like, what do you have? Like, so here's what two things I was like, I really do want to love it. And there was a time that I didn't love it, but I tolerated. I probably had a good time. That was the time I did a 10K and stuff. But no, I don't know. Like, I guess some of it is, I guess when I look at your post, or before we got in here, I was talking about my friend that made fun of Goggins and stuff. Like when I look at his, I'm like, I don't have that. Like whatever you guys are having, which is the same for, it's funny because you're a runner / jujitsu guy.
Yeah.
The runners I know, they think I'm crazy. They're like, I would never cuddle with a guy the whole time and let him choke me. And I'm like, but that's so fun. That's amazing. And they're like, no, you're gay. Running is cool. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, if you ever try to fight me, I just outrun you. And I'm like, well, okay, like this argument's weird. But anyway, like, yeah, I'm not, anyway, the point is, I don't have a, like, even struggle. I'm struggling talking about, I just want to be you, Zach, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's the only good part about me, man. You don't want to be anything else like me.
Yeah, I'm trying so hard. I've tried, and I kind of gave up recently. So I need it, because at least I was running every Sunday. I would run 3 or 4 miles, and like I haven't done that since the pandemic either. But anyway,
For sure. So obviously nature is like one thing I'm really into, especially as I get older, I suppose.
so that's a good point though. So do you like trail running, or do you like running on the road, or both?
Roads, trails got so many hills and it just sucks. I mean, I like trail running. I've done it before. But I really, and trail, like I do like being in nature, but I just can't run as far, or I can't run as long because the elevation gets, it's something you really have to practice. And I don't have anywhere to practice like that. And I listen to music when I run, and there's no reception in those kind of trails, but I do it sometimes. I like roads, but the fortunate part is I live in West Virginia, so I can find anything. And I'm like, fuck, oh, I can cuss. I was like, damn, that's a good picture. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to be a good picture. And, so that's one aspect of it. Not everybody likes nature like I do. I really enjoy, I like being around water and trees and waterfalls. And, the other thing, I guess, that like, if you really wanted to enjoy it, I think part of it is just like, it's kind of like jujitsu, like you guys were talking about with like competition sometimes, is you can't commit to an outcome to enjoy. Like I can't rely on winning to be happy with jujitsu, right? And that's the same with like running. Like I just rely on the effect. After a match or a training session, I'm just like, God damn, I feel good. And like you said, like how runners think grapplers are crazy and grapplers think runners are crazy. People at work think I'm like the craziest person in the world because they don't do any of that. They're like, they call me the long-haired, like, if you see that long-haired running guy, that's our therapist. And then they're like, and don't piss him off, because if you do, you can't get away from him. He's going to run as far as he can to get you, and he's going to strangle you for it. Like that's like the joke around the office. So I guess really just to kind of answer your question is like, you can't really have it. I'll even give a better example. My friend Jackie, I think one time we ran on a trail together, and it was me, her, and Chris, and I think before they both had their like kind of life take them away from running for a little bit. And I remember like I was complaining because I was like, I was training for a marathon, and it was the one in Erie, and they said, I was like, man, I'm just not finishing my workouts. I'm trying too hard. They want me to run way too fast. And I was like, and I forget which one told me, but they were like, just don't set the expectation to complete it. Just if you have to slow down a little bit, slow down, or, just don't even follow the training plan, just enjoy it. So that's kind of what it is. Just don't have an expectation, and without that expectation, the worry, the stress of meeting an expectation just goes away. Just do the damn workout. You know what I mean? Just put the wows in, just put the one foot in front of the other for a certain amount of, for 30 minutes. And I guarantee you, I don't want to say you'll be happier, because it takes a while to kind of get to that, but you'll be more appreciative. You'll be glad you completed it. And I think that's really what people find happiness out of.
There is the shut up and do it, right? That's a big part of it. It's the shut up and do it. And we've talked about, I know Butch has talked about it, but running was not, it's for me, it's never been fun either. It's been something I had to do to be in shape for other shit. It had nothing to do. I was never running to get better at running. I was running because I needed better cardio for jiu-jitsu. And that was it. Or I ran track in high school because I thought the coach was hot. So I did run for a couple of years in high school, but that was one of those things where it was like, it was never the goal for me has never been to get better at running. The goal has always been to use it for something else. This is my cardio. And so when I look at running and burpees are the same thing to me.
Yeah.
And I don't see any difference in burpees and running. I hate life when I'm doing them. And so for me, it's one of those things where I just need to shut up and go do it. And there's a lot of stuff in our life, paying taxes, going to sometimes going to your job or whatever it is, but it's sometimes you just got to shut up and do it.
So I noticed too, Zach, you mentioned 30 minutes. Do you think that's a magic number? Like just start at 30 and see what happens, or?
Everybody has 30 minutes in their day. It's 30-minute lunch break, 30-minute. I run on my lunch breaks. People at work will text me like, are you working today? I'm like, yeah, it's my lunch break. And they're like, wow. I'm like, I work on, not everyone has an office job like I do. Like I do therapy. So I'll be writing notes. I'll just eat ground beef and rice real quick. You know what I mean? Or make a hot pocket, which is much more realistic at this point sometimes.
Yeah.
But like everybody has 30 minutes in their day. You know what I mean? 30 minutes before your kids wake up, get on that treadmill real quick. 30 minutes, kids put to bed. 30 minutes before you take your shower. Just go get sweaty real quick and make that shower worth it. That's honestly the only reason I use 30 minutes. 30 minutes, that's a TV show. You know what I mean? That's the knowledgeable man. I say that in quotes because I don't know what that is, but that's a knowledgeable man's reading time. You know what I mean? So that 30 minutes, everybody's got that. Not everybody has an hour, not everybody has 45, but I firmly believe 30 minutes.
That's a good point, because it's funny because at my gym, I always say 2 minutes because I'm like, just ask my wife. Everybody's got 2 minutes in them, right? It's a little different story, right? But, so maybe I should up that to 30. She's not going to agree. There's no 30 with me and her, but yeah, no, it's a solid point. And I like it because you're giving, that's a good point. That's motivational, meaning that I do have 30 minutes. I always joke with people too. Like when they say like, I don't joke with people, but we're the same, like everybody, if you ask somebody why they don't work out, whether it's running or weightlifting, they'll say, man, I just don't have the time. Right. And I say that too, but I also end that with, if you told me you'd give me $1 million, if you'd go work out, I'd find the time. So I'm letting you know that I'm also making excuses. Like I say, I don't have the time, but I could find it. And I haven't been,
I can't promise $1 million for running or jiu-jitsu for 30 minutes, but I can't promise you'll be a lot more happier. I can promise that.
No, and that's huge, because that's what I'm looking at. I think half of us that do jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing, kickboxing, we're doing that because that's our escape, right? And I think all of us on this podcast, right, we all joke about we're also a little mentally crazy, right? And that's why we're in the sport. So we're looking for things that kind of make you happier, that make you better. And jiu-jitsu is that for a lot of people, right? Like, for example, I did, I was able to do jiu-jitsu today with one of my friends for an hour. And we worked on moves. Here's what I regret is I was not tired, right? Because we were working on moves. So we did an hour. My thought process going into that training session was I do need to work on a couple things, but then I want to roll because I need to get that anxiety out of me and that bad mood out of me. However, my training partner wasn't on the same page, and so I wasn't going to push it. So we did the hour. I just didn't get that sweaty, like it was a great hour. So if he listens to this, I just want to, it was a great hour. I learned a lot. I'm better at jiu-jitsu after the hour. But what I was missing was, again, like I hate to say it, but like, I went to a basketball game with some people I didn't want to see. I would have loved to go into that game, like just relaxed and happy. I didn't. I still had the same level of anxiety of craziness that I went in where I was looking to start some shit. I wish I had got out of my system. Right. So anyway, running probably would have did that for me.
For sure. Yeah. And that, I think a lot of people they call some people call my old gym before I got kicked out, call me a good mood Zach, because I was always in a pretty good mood. And I think a lot of it is at my current gym, not only like people kind of think like I just kind of roll jiu-jitsu or, you know what I mean? But if you see my matches, like I'm go the whole time. Like, even if it's not really a move, I'm just going, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to pace you, which is, I'll attribute that to one of my coaches, Tony Petrella, because he was a D2 All-American wrestler and he does not let you breathe a second. He's in your face the whole time. But part of that is like at my gym too, like, you know, a lot of gyms I've trained at, and I don't have a preference for how you train at your gym. I think jiu-jitsu is for everybody and you find what you like. At my gym, we do 10 rounds minimum every class, you know, and you can leave if you have to, like, but like if you don't have anything to do, you're expected to do 10 rounds. You may not always have like a tough round, you know what I mean? But it's the goal is to get you sweaty. And I think that's why we have such high numbers. If you ever look at our page, like we have like on a slow night at like 20 people, and you know, on like a good night, we've had like 30, 40 people. It's not even a promotions night. Promotions nights suck because we have a small room. But I think people really like that. And I think, like I said, it kind of translates to running because like people that enjoy jujitsu, like they want a workout. Like that's the majority of what people want is a workout, lose weight and feel good about themselves. And jiu-jitsu does all of that. Running does all of that too. And it's the same thing as jiu-jitsu. Like you don't want people looking at you. You don't want to look stupid. You don't want to look, you know what I mean? You don't look fit. But if you really like boil it down, they're the same thing. It's a hard workout. It's a hard workout that'll make you really sweaty. You just got to like look at it that way. Like it's very like black and white for me. You know what I mean? So, and I have a lot of reasons why I like running. I don't expect people to like running like I do, but you know, if you're trying to look into running and you're a jiu-jitsu guy or a CrossFit guy, why do you like those type of workouts? And then what's different than running? Running is a hard workout. I think I don't like lifting weights because I don't get sweaty. I'll be honest. I could do CrossFit, but I don't want to get hurt, I guess. And I like kettlebells. I've been getting into kettlebells lately though, but I don't sweat as much. I like to sweat. So running and jiu-jitsu are it for me. So
Are you trying to run faster every time you run? Is that what makes you sweaty or
no, it's just your heart rate elevates pretty good. And I tend to wear warmer clothing. Like I dress a little warmer than I should. Because I like to sweat. Same with like, I like wearing long sleeve rash guards under my gi. I like to crank the heat up, if I'm being honest. I'm very unpopular in that my gym. And I know Andy, who actually runs it, he's the other brown belt that runs it. He puts me in check. He's like, we can't lose members because you're a fucking psycho that wants to just train in a sauna the whole time. But that's just what it is for me.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you another question here. So I see these posts on Instagram, so I'm just an outsider viewing, and this will be good for you to answer.
Yeah.
So is Dan your best training partner, or do you guys just fuck with each other? Or
Don lives in Louisiana.
Don, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Don.
That
I knew exactly who you meant.
I'm sorry.
And
no, it's 100%. I apologize now.
No, you're good. Don't apologize to him. He doesn't deserve it. I hate that guy, but he's one of my best training partners. Yeah. He's just we call him Donnie DeVito. I encourage everyone to call him that. He's a little small, Napoleon complex, but yes, all my training partners are like, it's hard to explain like what a best training partner is. Cause I have guys that I drill with on Saturdays, Trenton, Alex, Theo, like they study and then they up my game. My leg lock game sucks, but they know how to digest that information better. So they kind of train with me. Andy, he co-runs it with me. He's like my hardest round, one of my hardest rounds. Don, he when he comes into town, like everyone gets excited because Don is like the reason this gym does 10 rounds because he's very hard on people. Tony, he's another, oh my God, Tony is just like, he's the reason I got good at competing because he's like, all right, I'm tired of you sucking. So this is what you're going to do, this, and this. And so pretty much my pressure. And then Jeb, he's like very technical. He's one of like the OG kind of like people. He lives in Atlanta now.
Does he really? I didn't know that. So is he a cop in Atlanta or what's he doing in Atlanta?
Yeah, he works law enforcement in Atlanta. He's very obviously not very big on social media or anything like that. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it, but it's not the first time I've pissed him off. So I think I'll just stay on that streak. I've been known to be, obviously I've been kicked out of a gym before. I've been known to be a little bit, say the wrong thing. I'm very authentic on how I feel about things. Like if I like you, and I like almost everybody. I'm sure it's hard for some people to imagine I can't get along with anybody, but me and Jeb obviously get along. But yeah, there are 3 black belts. They're all out of, and Tony, he's a cop, so he works weird hours, and so it's really just me and Andy running it, and Andy most like 90% of everything, and me just teaching the classes. But everyone's a good training partner, I think. And if they're not, we make them that way pretty quickly. And I can give so many shout outs to people that have improved, but if you train with me, I appreciate all of you if you somehow come across this podcast.
How often are you teaching class?
So we have a weird system kind of set up right now. I didn't really like teaching at first, so I kind of put in a fail safe so I didn't get burnt out, because it kind of fell on me. That we have an instructor, a purple belt or a brown belt. Well, I'm a brown belt, but like someone that's an up and comer or a blue belt that's really good, and we give them like a week to a month of curriculum, and we have a curriculum set up, and they make that curriculum. They review it by me. In general, when I'm teaching, it's 3 times a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday. I do my striking in Morgantown if I make it up there, because I'm sure some of them will listen like, he hasn't been up here. I had ringworm guys. I'm just not very communicative. I'm not going to post on social media. I have a skin disease, but 3 weeks, and then Sundays are open mat. I don't really teach anything, and Sunday I'm drilling right now as well, right before open mat. But yeah, about 3 times a week for a month on the time, and then like this week I'm teaching because our instructor's out of town, and I'm always the backup. Like that, I'm always there anyway, just in case you can't make it, whatever the case may be. And that's why I review the curriculum to make sure I can teach it, because some of those guys know stuff that loose passing, that's a thing right now, and I'm learning it, and I like it. All of our students are doing really well with it. This is their first week. We're trying to get them off their knees when they pass, and kind of sucks now, because now I realize how shitty my guard is.
Yeah. Well, that's what always happens when you learn new stuff, right? You're like,
Yeah.
shit, like I didn't know.
Sure.
How often do you guys get to like intermingle with the Morgantown crew?
All the time. All the time. Yeah, they come down generally on a Sunday. Most of them will come down. I go up there. I try to get people to go up there. Again, we all have lives. Morgantown's more of a, not to downplay my gym, but Morgantown's more of like a serious, they got more competitors there. So they're more into the up to date. They have more leniency, where a lot of my team, my gym is, single moms, or I shouldn't say single moms, but like moms that are like, they got families at home, men like with families or with jobs, kids, hobbyists. We're literally a hobbyist gym. Some of them do compete. I compete by far the most. But we're hobbyists. And like I said, if you're coming, we gauge, me and Andy, we keep our curriculum. We start basic and advance it so they can learn. We don't like splitting classes between beginner and advanced. And we make sure that everyone learns, and we read the room. If it's just a bunch of new people on an advanced night, then we're not going to do it. And but yeah, we're all good friends. We're all allies. Ground Zero Bridgeport, Ground Zero Morgantown, Ground Zero Pittsburgh. We go up there sometimes. Wheeling the bullpen. I know there's a little controversy at States, although I could give a fuck less about a team title. It's just who has the most people, honestly. Yeah. Not dogging anyone that wants.
No, you're completely fine.
Like when that whole thing with like Wheeling's always been a part of our thing. It's not downplay. They didn't just join to get we did want a state title that year. That's not, well, we as the OGs of Ground Zero, but like I personally didn't care. I'm sure Colin didn't really care. But it was a nice thing to have. And, one of the OGs is at Wheeling. So of course he wants to be a part of it. Yeah. And that's that. We all intermingle. The only one we don't really talk to as much, but we don't have anything wrong against. Like I like those guys up there, is Ground Zero Huntington. I don't know why. We just don't.
It's far. What's that?
Yeah.
It's 3 hours plus, right? Probably.
Yeah. It's just not but I have nothing against those guys. I just haven't really ever talked to them. And, I like the brothers, Nate and Hedricks, the Hedrick brothers. They beat the shit out of me every time. But like I have no ill will. I don't have ill will against anybody, against my old gym.
Yeah, I don't even know what's good. We had Nathan on, but is Sam still at Ground Zero Huntington, or he
might be. I know he started his own gym, Jewel City. I don't know if there's any beef or anything. Like sometimes people just go off and just start their own gym. But no, those guys, like, they're cool. I know they're killers. I tell them all the time,
absolutely.
Like I can never beat Nate. I think it's Nate I go against. I can never beat, and he's a lot bigger than me now. Obviously, I'm trying to lean out a little bit, but he's a lot bigger than me. But yeah, those are guys, and most of my cross training is up in Pittsburgh. Honestly, I try to go up there to Lose and the Mat Factory pretty often. Those are guys. I just like the way they train hard. I like that hard, like get after it. They train the same way we do. And I get new techniques, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. It's complicated, right? Like, so Jeremy runs Pittsburgh, is that correct? Or
Yes, Jeremy Koshak, I think is
yeah,
what they call him, Fridge. And he does a pretty. I like their social media. If you ever follow their social media, it's
yeah,
yeah, they do a good job. I think it's ran by Olivia. Um, but golly, we're trying to mock their social media, but I mean, we're just a bunch of old men. They got the side of youth with them, but they had calling up for a leg lock seminar. They're always trying to get better. They travel to all of our gyms more than we travel to them, and I think I need to go up there. So Jeremy, and I told Jeremy, Jeremy, I'll make it up there if you're watching this. I hate traveling right now at this point from all the competing.
yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, we could probably go on and on. I'm watching the time, Gary. I know you got stuff to do. Because here's what I regret on this one is that we spent so much time on WVGO, and I regret that just because it has to do with me. And I want to spend more time with you, Zach, which I still think we did. Like,
Yeah,
I could talk to you about running and jiu-jitsu all the time. And I also mentioned this, just so you know, I want to mention this. It's not to give Lee Keaton props, but as far as jiu-jitsu guys go, I think Lee's podcast was the number one, which is crazy.
I told him he's going viral.
Yeah,
Look at those numbers, man. You ain't gonna know me no more.
he's fucking killing it. Like, the YouTube numbers are different than our Spotify numbers and stuff, right? Because somebody's got to watch YouTube as opposed to just listen in the car. But going on the YouTube number, I mean, there's a couple other podcasts, but like the biggest one was Bigfoot. That one's Lee Keaton's like the Bigfoot of West Virginia, apparently.
Yeah.
But I consider, so I'm not joking when I say this. Like, Zach, you're one of my favorite people. Lee is also too, like, and so is Gary, everybody on this. I mean, which is cool. I think that's why, to get better as a person, you got to hang out with people that make you better.
For sure.
Which is why I'm hanging out with you two and Lee. You guys all make me better. Like, everything that you say, that's what I'm saying. Like, again, we got stuff to do, but I mean, I could talk to you guys forever, because like, just the motivation on running, just like, there's other questions, and we'll do this again, but like, I want to know how running helps your jiu-jitsu. I want to know a lot of things that we don't have time for today, which is okay. It's because Gary's an asshole and he's got shit to do.
Yeah, how dare you?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. So, but that all being said, like, I swear to God, like, I'm not joking. Like, you're a big inspiration to me, Zach, because here's what I need in my life is, like, I think I'm busy, but you can get caught up in what you do, which is maybe what it is or not what it is. I don't know. Like, I think I'm doing more than what I am doing. But when I log on and I see you showing a sunrise, a sunset, jiu-jitsu, rolling, like, talking shit to Don, talking shit to whoever, like, I'm like, I'm not doing enough. Like, I got to do more. Cause I know personally, like, it looks like I'm doing a podcast. I'm teaching my class, I'm working, but I'm not working out like on my extra time. And it makes me feel like a vagina. So I need to do better. So that's what you are for me, and in a good way. That's who I want to hang out with, is people that motivate me. And both you guys are those things. Like, if we're not hanging out with people that check us and make us do better, then you're not doing the right thing, right? Like, and there's studies for that. Like, if you hang out, this is a legit study. I don't know who did it, but like, if you hang out with overweight people, you're more apt to be overweight, right? Because that means that most of those people are probably eating fast food all day, eating donuts. I'm one of those people, so I'm not making fun of anybody.
Yeah.
You're going to do more of that. But if I hang out with more people that are like, for example, I had a good friend, his name's Lee as well, but he would keep me in check. Like we would go, and like, I would maybe grab a piece of pizza. He's eating a piece of salmon, and he would look at me, he goes, "You really going to eat that?" I was like, well, like, I was, I guess I'm not, like, now. Like, but I didn't have anybody, and he's not been around much lately, and I miss that. Like, that's what I need. I need somebody to be like, well, I'm going for a run. What are you going to do? And I'll be like, well, I was going to watch Impractical Jokers or something. And they're like, okay, lazy piece of shit, I'll see you in here in 30 minutes. You said,
Butch needs someone constantly around to shame him.
Yes, that's 100% what I need, which is why I'm hanging out with you guys. That's why I'm on this thing. Like, I'm admitting all my self failures. It left to my own devices, I'd be watching Ancient Aliens, The Curse of Oak Island, and Pawn Stars, and I would never leave the house. I basically watch History Channel and Discovery all day. So I need people like you in my life. So, and I'm not joking. Like I literally do.
And I'll say this, I guess if we're capping it, because like I could talk all day, every day, and if it's running in jiu-jitsu, man, I could talk. But I'll say, like, you know, you mentioned in the beginning, I like to help at the tournament. I don't really take any kind of credit for it, and I don't just because like this is where I started. You know what I mean? I think this tournament's good for jiu-jitsu, even if it's a 2.5-hour drive for me and my guys. It's a good tournament, and it's like Gary said, like it's honest, it's sincere. Mistakes happen, but it's because it's laid back, and that's, you know, you'll never see me throw a fit. And, you know, me and Lee have talked about it before. It's like you're the reason jiu-jitsu's grown in West Virginia originally, I think. And, you know, like I said, like I'll always compete at a West Virginia grappling open. I'll always help ref. I know Gary tries to reward me with dinner, but I really just want to go home half the time. You know, he's like, I owe you. And I'm like, yeah, I know you do. I'll stay next time. And I just never stay. But it's because I really do, like, it's like almost giving back, you know, like, not to be cliche about how much you appreciate jiu-jitsu, but like, I love to compete. That was like my thing. It is my thing still. I'm just, again, a little hiatus. But it was like, it's just, I'm very thankful for that, because without it, I wouldn't have had the confidence to ever go to Pittsburgh and compete. I wouldn't have the confidence to sign up for, like, with the first money bracket too. Like, I would have never had that confidence. I made it to the finals, got wrecked, but that's okay. Like, it just happens. But you know, it's just been really good for my confidence. And I think if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't be training jiu-jitsu still. I wouldn't be like quasi running a gym, you know, or teaching techniques, like none of that, or getting people to compete, you know. So I'm just really like super appreciative. And you'll never hear me, if you ever hear anyone say any different, it's a lie. Like that's all I talk about, how thankful I am when it comes to West Virginia Jiu-Jitsu and you and the tournament and what you've done.
Well, I appreciate it. Go ahead, Gary. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I was going to say, normally Butch has me wrap things up. And I'm not saying this, not just because I have to go and do work, but I think that's a perfect thing to say right there at the end, is as far as like how much we appreciate this and just kind of giving back to it. I mean, it means a ton to me. I know you mean a ton to Butch as well to me, and all that you've done as far as WVGO and helping out the competitions, and really kind of taking a leader role and trying to set some stuff up. And so I appreciate you for that. So thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And listen, let's do a part 2 where we can talk to just you and not have my stupid shit be important, because it's not important.
No, I'm going to blast it. But yeah, for sure, we'll do a part 2. But I'm going to blast. It's good. I wanted to do that because I'm tired of people messaging me. I'm just going to send them the clip.
Yeah, just watch this.
Everything you need to know.
Yeah. But yeah, let's have. Here's what I think, Gary, we should do. We're going to sign off, but let's have, like, we'll do another one, but let's have Zach motivate us for 2 non-runners. And listen, I know you ran when you competed and stuff, like, you know, but I'm assuming you're a non-runner like me.
I am. I'm not. I don't run now at all.
Yeah, let's have him shame us to death, and maybe let's go enter something. Let's set some kind of goal. We won't do it now because it won't be sincere. Let's do something in the future where he can, like, literally make us his little bitches, and that would be great. I mean, honestly, because that's the one thing that I do regret on this whole. This is a great podcast. I love talking to you, but like, I wanted to be more about you. I know we had some stuff to get out, but I do, and so that's why I want a part 2, because you're way more interesting than Lee Keaton. So we have to do something.
I'm not saying that because I got to see him soon. So I'm not saying that.
A badass. All right, go ahead, Gary. We'll get out here, let you do some work, man.
All right, man, guys. Another rest round. Appreciate both of you guys. Thank you so much. Everybody, if you can, get out the WVGO, and Zach, we'll see you soon. We're gonna have you on again.
Yes, sir. See you guys.
All right, all kinds of love, guys. Take care.
All right, see you guys, man. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.